Hello, good evening. Welcome to 1 Foot in 5D, where all high strangeness is welcome. All high strangeness is welcome, even encouraged. I'm your host, Alara of Sirius. Tonight we are privileged to have Caltech Ph.D. and world's leading crop circle expert, Dr. Horace Drew with us. Dr. Drew is the gentleman who cracked the code on the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident in the 1980s, along with some other people. He'll be breaking down some of his crop circle decodes. We'll be discussing time travelers, ET, Mr. Poole, and so much more. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show, Red. It's great to have you on.
Hello, Laura, and everybody, all other interested people around the world. I'm looking forward to this very much. And I can chat with some of you on Twitter later afterwards, if not too much.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Can I get a 5x5 in the chat if the sound is good and we're good to go, you guys? It's good to see you. Hi, DK. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Christina. Hi, Foil. Hi, CAD Spotter. Foil, I wanted to ask you, and all the mods specifically, if you could please kind of gather the questions throughout the show, because I really won't be able to focus on those until later in the show, because I'll be busy going through Red's slides and stuff. So if you guys could do that, that would be great. And yes, this is so exciting to have you on, Red. I found you on Twitter, and I was just fascinated. I read your bio, and I was like, wow, this guy's right up my alley, all the stuff he's into. So, yeah, it's really good to have you on and be able to talk. I know nothing about crop circles, like zero, and I've been learning a lot from you, and this is going to be a lot of fun to learn more with everyone else.
Well, I'll tell you briefly how I got into crop circles. When I was a kid, I was into UFOs because 1965, just after the Cuban Missile Crisis, I was outside. We'd seen some strange lights in the sky. And then one day I turned around, there was a dog barking with my neighbor right in front of a suburban house in daylight in Jacksonville. And there was a saucer, like a big saucer, just hanging in the air right in front of me. And I was just amazed if this thing was hovering up in the air by gravity or whatever. And I was a little scared. Then I ran toward it and watched it fly away like a cruise missile over the trees. I thought at first it was a Russian secret weapon, but it must have flown 2,000 miles an hour like this over the trees and made no noise.
Yeah.
And it looked like everybody else's. So people said, no, there's no such thing. When I was just watching it, the dog was barking. And a lot of my friends, half my friends had seen one too, like following them down the road. And then I become a scientist because I'm very interested in DNA and gravity. I became a world famous DNA scientist. Did the first structure, high resolution image of DNA in 1980 at Caltech. With Dickerson.
You got a PhD from Caltech in what, chemistry or?
They call it chemistry as a broad term, but I was doing what's called X-ray diffraction, where you grow a crystal of things, and you shoot X-rays through it, and you analyze the crystal. And I've synthesized a big long piece of DNA chemically, grew the beautiful crystal of it. It's one of the world's most famous DNA crystal, still 30 years on, CGCGAATTCGCG. And we analyzed exactly, so we were the first ones to get a high resolution image of DNA. Like the base pairs aren't really flat, they're twisted like their color, for example. So lots of details weren't known before, lots of things. So then I gave it away for a while, and then back in 1998, I got interested in UFOs again. I've been seeing some, and I contacted Bill Chalker, who's a very famous UFO researcher here in Australia. A friend of mine lives out not far from here. And he had several UFO cases, one of which involved the hair from an alien woman being Peter Curry, a local contact case. So I got a DNA team together, privates and top guys, and we did forensic analysis on an alien woman's hair. It was really real. Her hair is about that long. I suppose you'd call her sexy. I don't want to say anything offensive, you know. By her standards, she must be very attractive. And they wanted to have a child with her, with Peter, crossbreed. Between Peter and this woman, wherever she is, tall, blonde, albino-like, maybe 6'6". This woman's quite big. So they have a hybrid children. That child is probably out there somewhere right now. And then I didn't really get into crop circles, and I got into UFO stuff like with Colm Kelleher. We were having meetings about analyzing Roger Lear DNA samples.
Right.
We were having DNA samples to see if they're alien or not. So we did that for a while.
Okay.
I met Mr. Bigelow was there, and we did that for like 2 or 3 years, analyzing potential like samples that might be alien for the DNA.
And how did
And
that lead into crop circles?
Indirectly, what happened was I had one good sample turn out alien. This blonde, this real woman is real. Some tall blonde alien woman. I don't know who she is, but she's real. I had her hair. It was very impressive. The rest of the samples were crap. So then I went to see Com Kelleher, who was at NIDS, and Mr. Bigelow, and I think it was just before 2002 in August in Las Vegas. So I went there to Las Vegas with Roger Lear, who was a researcher from Thousand Oaks, plant researcher. And the crop circle appeared, the big crabwood crop circle appeared just when I was in the parking lot. And they were showing it to me. It was the big one, say, believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. So I'd never really seen crop circles before that. And I said, well, is this thing real? You know,
That was
Mr.
the first
Bigelow,
one you saw? Was that one?
the first one I took seriously because I thought the others could be fake. This was totally impressive. And all the guys in Vegas thought it was impressive. And I got into it seriously after that in 2002. And then later what happened was after I left there, that was in August, I somehow got on a plane and went to England. But this is the most amazing story. You told me your story. So I go to England and I give a seminar at the engineering department about curvature DNA, all sorts of DNA stuff in front of a respected scientist at the in Trumpington Street, the engineering department, big seminar, you know, an academic seminar. And then it turned out one of the slides from our meeting was drawn in crops almost the same time it happened. It's at Crooked Solely in 2002. So they actually took a slide much more impressive than that thing behind you called Crooked Solely 2002. Look it up. And they drew it in the crop circles, like 1,296 square pixels. And I checked it out and it seemed to be no one made it, no human being made it. So I realized finally someone was watching our meeting, saw my seminar, and in response or in relation, drew this big crop picture describing the research we were doing there. And I was with the woman who crystallized the nucleosome core, because Francis Crick told her too. We're talking about the highest level scientists on earth I was working with, and I'm still in contact with them. So after that, I took crop circles very seriously from 2002 onward, and I began to study them more like a scientist. But that's been like 18 years now. Wow. And I was totally convinced at that point that these really big crop circles had to be real. There was no doubt.
So how did you get involved with the Rendlesham Forest incident? And how long after that initial crop circle was that?
Crop circles showed the binary code.
Right.
And I decoded that binary code. And binary code had also been given in 1980 to Jim Penniston. What happened was Jim Penniston, you know, when you have a UFO encounter like that, him and John Burroughs had 4 hours of missing time with aliens. People come out of it a bit strange. You understand what I mean? You come out of it like strange things happen to you.
Yes.
You're afraid to tell people.
I know.
You're afraid that so people get a bit withdrawn.
Yes.
John Burroughs is especially that way. A nice guy, you know, he had heart trouble from the radiation. And he had to get, you know, official radiation damage from the UFO. And Burroughs and Penniston got this huge thing, like 1,500 zeros and ones on sheets of paper. And he somehow got it all dumped in his brain. Now, how many zeros and ones can you remember if I told you the series without getting it wrong?
This wasn't written on the ship. It was zeros and ones he got dumped in his brain when he touched the ship?
Sometime between then and they had 4 hours of missing time, all this memory got put in his brain. Okay. And he's not the only one. So then later, they downloaded something in his brain. It's going to affect you, won't it? You know. So later he had to write it. He had to write it down, some hypnotic thing. And he went back and he could only relax after he'd written it on paper. So he had 13 sheets of paper and a notebook like this big. And it was such a strange thing. He didn't tell anybody till 2010. And then he showed some of it to Linda Howe at the meeting. Linda Howe was out there at the Rendlesham Forest meeting, 5 pages. He was afraid to show it all. I've never met them personally. Apparently he was afraid to show it all, his friends tell me. And it caused a sensation. So Linda contacted me and Mike Reed, who did the famous pi. Have you seen that pi to 10 digits crop picture, which is on the that big pi crop picture with a coded thing? Mike solved that. He was an astrophysicist from Harvard. And so
do I have that one? Is that the first one in the slides? Because I could show them if that's the first one. No, I think
that's just 3.141592654. Pi is a rotary device, and Mike Reed, who's passed away, did that. So Linda contacted us, And aliens was going to do it. And she didn't trust ancient aliens for good reason. So she trusted us to produce an accurate translation. You don't want some mystical thing. It's got to be accurate, right? And so I did it with Mike. And it turns out they said the origin coordinates for where the craft came from, they gave latitude and longitude to 7 digits. And that's actually, if you go to Google Earth, that's the Woodbridge town center to 7 digits. We're talking about 1-inch accuracy of Woodbridge, England. So that's a homing beacon for somewhere in the future, or wherever they're listing that is their Latin long origin of the craft. They time jumped back from Woodbridge, which isn't that far away back in time, like
right.
some huge distance. So the thing was totally impressive technically when you look at it. And they made up all sorts of stuff. The ancient aliens got it wrong. It didn't. I think they did that intentionally to discredit the story. But the real story is completely like sound.
Right.
And of course he was affected by them. Who wouldn't be affected by getting all that stuff in your head,
Right.
So I have copies of all of that original code and all of that. I have it all. It's all completely authentic as far as I'm concerned.
So you figured out the binary download that he got, or you figured out the symbols on the ships, or both?
The symbols on the ship resemble crop circles, but nobody knows what they mean. I'll come back to the symbols in a minute.
Okay.
I did the whole binary code accurately. It's like reading a slightly degraded cuneiform manuscript. In some parts of it you can't read. Some reason is he's written down the zeros and ones wrong. And another part because the words they're using isn't words in our vocabulary. For example, in the physics jargon of the future, these time travelers, they have a time is a continuous series of probabilities, or a Markov distribution. Time is a continuous series of probabilities. And the word they put in there was continuoquence PR. It's a physics jargon word from the future. It's temporal physicists. Continuoquence PR wasn't a word. That word doesn't exist in our language today. That's why other people couldn't translate it. So the symbols themselves, which he saw, were later seen on another craft in 2015 by CJ, an active U.S. military man, still quite young, about 40, and 20 years military. And then John Burroughs, who saw the first craft and touched the symbols, later saw this other UFO craft reported, and he was the one who told Linda the symbols are the same as the Lindbergh craft. So they have independent confirmation. And he also got a binary code, but his binary code wasn't just binary, it was a 4-symbol computer code, which doesn't exist on Earth. So Linda gave that one to me, and it took me a month to solve it. There's several 4-symbol computer codes. And basically what it is, what we're using now to converse, we're using 2-symbol Wi-Fi, flipping back and forth very quick, right? Every little thing we're doing is in 2-symbol Wi-Fi, on, off, on, off, on, off, voltage switching. And what they do is they use 4-symbol Wi-Fi, whoever these are, which is much more efficient, 4-symbol Wi-Fi. And all the computer codes, the transmission codes are also in 4 symbols. And I thought that'd be a good way to improve Earth's computer system. So I went to these computer companies, and they haven't done it yet, but they're just afraid to do it. It's like we're using DC power and they're using AC. It'd be so much more efficient to go to 4 symbols. You get everything will be better, and we're just sort of stuck. We're using the old computing, and I can show them the new computing. And for corporate reasons, they just don't want to do it. Our computing would just sky out if we would just switch over to the alien computing. So at some point, this will happen,
Do you have an understanding of where this quantum, they're about to shift everything. I'm sure you pay attention to the CIO, and you have been for years, just like me. So this whole quantum computing and quantum financial that we're moving into, do you have a grasp? I mean, I'm sure you do have a good grasp.
I don't know about the quantum financial, but the quantum computing is going to be very difficult price to benefit ratio compared to just switching over to 4 symbols. We can switch to 4 symbols right now with our existing tech. There's no engineering breakthroughs necessary. Whereas to go to quantum computing, or except in a small laboratory scale, to make that available to everyone, it'll be very, very difficult. I think it'll just be used for a long time for small, maybe special computers. I don't think they're going to roll that out across the whole world for a long, maybe if ever, because there are no big advantages. It's mainly for very rapid problem solving. It's not for communication. So, there's a phase angles. If you know what quantum mechanics is, you can imagine making a computer system out of that looks a bit difficult.
Right.
So the 4-symbol computing is definitely in our future. So I had that. And now again, when I got into crop circles anyway, because it turned out there's a link between the time travel, all these things are linked together. You know, the crop circles aren't done by people with roving boards. These mysterious aliens, time travels, interdimensional travelers. And they're making 40 of them every year for the past 30 years. And most of them are very well documented, like it's not human made, say 95%. So if they say 20% are real, that's bullshit. If they say 50% are real, that's bullshit. If you say 95% are real, you're getting close. And so that's actually, imagine the scam they put on everybody. Just think about it. Reconfigure all your thinking to say that 90% of those crop circles are real. And then you're in the right ballpark. Okay.
Okay. So I have a question. What is your understanding of how they're making the crop circles?
The tech is beyond. I've been to like 30 crop pictures freshly made. If you walk in one freshly made, the tech is beyond anything possible we could do. Not only is the crop just pressed down, but you see interwoven, you'll see incredible details of patterning the crop. You'll see like basket weaves, you know, and no one could be there for years doing this manually. It's impossible.
Right.
So they have some control of an energy which will pattern standing wheat at say like 1 centimeter resolution.
People have seen spheres, right? People have seen spheres out there, balls of light. So do you think that it's tech, or it's disincarnate beings or incarnate beings, or
we have no idea. The tech is so far beyond us. It's so far beyond us. It could be made, for example, in another universe and just switched over by entanglement. That's people suggested that. Right. You could have little thick lasers. I don't really, you know, whatever it is, people have seen these little craft going through, and some crop circles shooting little lasers down and like only about a meter above the crop, like craft that big, and doing it that way. But it isn't settled how the things are made at all. There's no certainty how it's made, you know. Some sort of radiation, you know.
Right, but it doesn't damage the crops, does it? It there's an energy.
Well, I mean, it doesn't crush them. It bends them and does things to them, heats them.
Right.
It doesn't actually. It'll bend them like bending an iron bar, like with heat. They're almost never crushed. If you walk in a new crop picture from 2012, I got there and we heard there was one on top of Wading Hill. So I got there and I left the one I was at, and I rushed up Wading Hill. And there were only 2 or 3 people there already, and the whole thing was full of pattern, but almost all the crop was still standing everywhere, like nothing had crushed it. You could see the pattern, but it was still, the crop was way off the ground. Then about an hour or two later, like, you know, 20, 30 people came. It was like a party. There was like 50 people. By that time, everybody walking around crushed the crop, so they'd stepped on it. But before they came, nothing was crushed. Nobody had walked there. You can just, it's so easy if you see a new one. No one had walked there. There was all patterned invisibly, and the crop was still standing everywhere off the ground at some distance. So it's totally different whether you had a bunch of people walking there or not. You know, you'll see, as soon as you see one that hasn't been crushed, it's impossible. There's no possible way anybody can make it.
Suiterbug just said he believes that the crop circles are made using consciousness technology. Would you agree with that?
No, I mean, somebody's obviously thinking of it. They've made a computer-aided design, but nobody knows. The tech is so far beyond us, we wouldn't know. It would be like explaining what we're doing to a Roman citizen 2,000 years ago. Could you explain to the Roman?
Right.
It'd be so far beyond, they could see it. They say, well, but you couldn't believe it, could you? Or mobile phone. So it's at least, tech must be 1,000 years ahead of us.
Right.
Yeah. Or 500 years, 100 years at least, some huge distance ahead of us to do this.
And you believe I mean, we're going to go over some of your slides and your decodes, but you believe they're trying to send us a message? Or are they leaving energetic signatures to elevate us, or a combination? Or what's your understanding of what they're up to?
There are a combination of several things happening here. First, the thing started in 1990. And some of them are messages, some of them don't elevate you. There's pretty pictures. So the question is, some give messages, some of them don't. They're just geometric pictures. So the question is, what is the purpose of this? It could be pre-disclosure messaging, like getting people used to the idea of reading alien languages. And there's no doubt, people say, why don't they write in English? Well, the reason is they're trying to change our consciousness. Writing in English is not going to change our consciousness, are they?
Right.
They want us to understand alien languages, like that woman in The Arrival, Amy Adams in The Arrival. Have you seen that movie?
Yep.
Where by learning the the heptapod language, she can start to think forward in time. I'm a bit like that.
Because their language will convey concepts that we don't have in our language, right?
That's right. So it's very important. So I've become like Amy. And they even did an arrival crop picture. Have you seen it? They have the heptapod holding his little 7-foot up on the glass. They've even done a heptapod arrival crop picture, a very famous one, saying how long it'll be before they arrive. The heptapod stepping on the earth. So they've seen our movies. They see everything. Everything on our web they watch, okay? They see everything.
Wow. That's super cool.
So just get an idea, you're watching this show if you want, so they watch our movies, our popular entertainment. Often there'll be crop circles related to some movie that year. Alice in Wonderland had the Cheshire Cat in that movie. They had the one where the scene from Alice to the Looking Glass where the Cheshire Cat appears near the windmill. Do you remember that one with Johnny Depp? Johnny Depp crashes in on the Tea Party. And there's a windmill there, and Johnny Depp sits down with Alice, something I forgot what happened. And the windmill's going around, and the Cheshire Cat appears on Johnny Depp's shoulder, okay? So they had a windmill in England, Wilton Windmill, and they drew the smiling Cheshire Cat right next to it. So whoever had done that had seen the Alice the Looking Glass movie and actually drawn it. So you see crop pictures drawn using cultural references from our entertainment,
I had no idea either till I started looking through your slides. I had no idea that the area around the crop circles is part of the decode. How did you discover that?
Well, originally it was known that crop circles were made by putting them next to radio telescopes, the radio telescope where you put next to a radio telescope, or ancient sites. And what people would notice is the shape of the crop picture as drawn would often resemble the landscape feature nearby, the ancient site. So then what we did is we thought, well, what we ought to do is every time a crop picture appears, we find out where it was drawn, and then we use Google Earth or long-range aerial drone photos, and we look to see the landscape in which it was drawn to see if it was part of a bigger picture. Does it resemble the landscape nearby? What relationship is there between the landscape and the picture? And some of them, generally there is, that's how they're chosen. If you look at the landscape from high above, like a kilometer or 500 meters, there's some pattern in the landscape they might see there. This might look like a horse or a cat or a triangle, and they choose to put the crop picture so it fits into that pattern. So when you see the crop picture is drawn, that may be only 50% of the information, then you put it in the landscape, you just paste it in on a Google Earth image, and you see the other 50%. So that's why you can't interpret it. Of course, you've left out half the puzzle, haven't you? So right. You have to do that. You have to actually put it in there. Most of the images they do are, if you go to Google Earth, most of them are north facing up. So if you wonder which way to rotate the landscape, most of them are north facing up within about 20 degrees. So usually you can...
One second, Red. Thank you, Christina Love, for your super chat. Appreciate your support. And also Sarah F., thank you very much. I'm sorry, go ahead, Red.
So anyway, eventually you learn that they're making it from the air. And the crop picture, the reason it looks uninterpretable is because that's not the whole picture. You have to include the whole landscape and you get a more accurate message. It's very obvious. Nobody on the ground's doing that. It's obviously, you have a misconception of these people with boards. Of course, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
They're creatures visibly up in the air or craft, and they've mapped out a surfaces they're watching in live time. And a lot of times the Google Earth is out of date, and you have to find a more accurate image. Sometimes the Google Earth image, but sometimes you've got to look for drone photos and things like that. The drone doesn't really go high enough to show you this. You need to go a bit higher than that. And that's how crop circles are done. If you look through all my images, you'll see there's some amazing things. If you go to long range, you'll picture an angel in the landscape, path, all sorts of things you see in the landscape, which crop circle maybe only like 10%, 20% in terms of size.
I had no idea there was stuff about our CIO. I had no idea there was stuff about our CIO in the crop circles before 2017 when he started dropping. Like that was
this started Quetzalcoatl.
Can I show you? I'm going to show them the well, you'll see the one I'm showing. Yeah, and you can explain to them.
Start showing things, okay?
All right. So this one here, the first three that are on Quetzalcoatl.
That's right.
Can you explain the Quetzalcoatl connection to? Go ahead.
This is the famous 2002 part of it, about half of it. crop picture in 2002, which I thought I saw when I was in Las Vegas in 2002. If you decode this, which I've done, believe there is good out there. That's Quetzalcoatl. He's signed in other places. And then later on, this Mr. whoever you would call him, who we can't mention,
The
starts
CIO.
using the same language. So I thought that was a bit suspicious, you know?
Interesting.
Because Quetzalcoatl, the famous Quetzalcoatl headdress, it's well known among the crop circle community that one of the major crop artists is called Quetzal or Quetzalcoatl. It could be the Mayan Quetzalcoatl, it could be the Quetzal who visited Billy Meyer, the UFO Quetzalcoatl. But as you'll see there are Q symbols drawn in crops like couple times a year. So there's definitely a relation there, you know?
There was one that was very fascinating. I don't think it's in the beginning here. It's later on, but there was one that I saw that was just like I couldn't believe it. Oh, this here. This is interesting too. How it's related to, you know, the CIO clock.
That's right. So what happens is when this
sorry, let me go back. There we go.
Clock of person we're not supposed to mention came out, I wondered if it was bullshit or not. So I went and figured out. I made my own confirmed that was the correct clock. It is the correct clock. It's just an Archimedean spiral with like 60 little days per turn. So every 60 days you go around once. Now obviously it looks just like that thing. And then this one says someplace much pain but still time, the crop one. And the other guy says pain 2019. What are the odds those could be two separate communications? Almost zero. So we conclude from that there's probably some relation between the crop picture and this clock. That would be because there's quite a good circumstantial evidence for that. We're dealing with some sort of time travel phenomenon. Crop circles and all this internet phenomenon are all related in some way. I think we can conclude that's a general conclusion. Okay.
Wow, there's a third one.
You happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was impossible. No one's ever reproduced that crop picture with broken boards. It's totally impossible technically to do it.
So let me show them this one too. It kind of goes with the other ones.
No one's ever made it. I think there are 1,500 something symbols.
Okay. And I think the other one that's related to that is later in the slides. So let me see. Oh, this one I thought was really interesting too. Let me move to number 10, which is about, where's number 10? Let me go to number 10.
This is cool, isn't it?
That one.
Go back to that one if you can.
Okay, hold on. Yeah.
Just make that a bit larger. So what happened was, before this internet thing started, in April of 2017, this made news all through England, a bank holiday crop picture, April of 2017. It's right at Share Hill, very easy to get to on the road. You're right near Compton Bassett. You drive by there. There's a white horse you can see up on the hill on the left. You can walk up there. People walk their dogs on top of there. And there's a big field of oilseed rape there. And what he drew a pendulum clock. Tick tock, with a moon in it, not many moons. How many moons, how many more moons, lunar months, until the white horse shows up? So the first, I'll teach you how to sell crop pictures. I went to this one. By the time I got there in July, I was a bit ratty. I took videos of it. I climbed up here to the horse. You could see it. It was still there, but a bit ratty. So what happens is this symbol was tick tock, tick tock. How many more lunar months until the white horse comes? See the Share Hill white horse. The white horse is the one who rides in to save us. Okay? Now, can you go back to that for a second?
Yeah.
Now, they remember, that was April, so we got May, June, July, August, September, October. About 6 months later, 5 months later, the white horse shows up in Washington, D.C. As you know, we're not allowed to discuss it. And what on the hill here is that's actually an English monument, something that looks exactly like the Washington Monument. You got it now?
Yeah.
Where was he headed? He's headed for Washington, D.C. The white horse is headed for Washington, D.C. You don't need to be a great interpreter of crop pictures to figure this out. Well, you can climb that monument. You know, it looks exactly like the Washington Monument. Everybody in that area of England knows that you can drive on the road and see by there. So the white horse, tick tock, is going to Washington, D.C. And that's so many months. You know, we're talking about months, not. So that was end of April 2017. So then by October 2017, our friend who we can't mention shows up in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So that was, I'd call that a predictive crop picture, you know?
Wow. I love that. That's
Do you understand
I
that?
would have,
Did I
I
explain?
mean, to some degree, I would have never figured that out. That's for sure. But I'm tracking you, just not, I mean, the white horse, how it relates to the other thing, I'm not fully getting. But I know if I were to try to fully grasp everything you're explaining, we would never get through all the slides. So.
Yeah, the slot's ticking back and forth. It goes to the horse, and then the pendulum punches.
Oh, I didn't see this. I didn't see this thing up here. That's what I meant. I missed this right here. I didn't see that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about.
That's why. Yeah. Okay. So that's. Oh, now I get it. Wow.
The pendulum will be tick-tocking. First, the pendulum points to the horse,
Right.
and then it tick-tocks over to the other. That's why it's a pendulum. It'll tick-tock and point to that big tower. Imagine it tick-tock. There's a little drawing. So the pendulum clock is tick-tocking back and forth between the two white lines. The horse is going to Washington, D.C. Now, if you wanted to symbolically draw that in crops, how could you do it any more clearly than that?
Yeah, that's pretty clear. That's definitely
pretty clear. You know, it's a pendulum. Otherwise, you would have drawn a pendulum clock. The pendulum is meant to be.
Thank you, White Hat. White Hat says, much love, fam. Good night. Thank you, White Hat. Appreciate your super chat. Okay, so let's.
You see how simple it is to understand that?
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so
Get
let's.
it now. I've actually been there. Once you're there standing on top of that hill, it's pretty obvious. You look at it and say, now you can understand exactly what it's a charade.
Okay, so I want to go to slide 10.
When you stand right there looking at it, it's pretty easy to understand.
I think this one was pretty fascinating
too. The white horse was
coming. This one here. So this showed up May 29th of 2020.
At the end of May this year.
Right.
And what happened was about a month earlier, they were trying to discredit crop pictures by showing some fake COVID image and discrediting it on Snopes. And you see the Snopes crap was a man and his cat, a man and his wife and a cat. They're trying to discredit real things all the time. So they were trying to discredit the idea that COVID could appear in crops just before this happened, and spreading it, crops are fakes, crops are fakes. So about a month after that, the real COVID appeared. And this appeared not far from Devizes, and the location was kept secret. And I realized it wasn't meant to represent COVID itself. It just meant to represent a generic virus. This is COVID on the right.
Yeah.
This is a generic virus. I mean, it's pretty close to COVID, isn't it?
Yeah.
Spike protein. And there's some debate about what these little 8 things mean. What would all those 8 things mean at the bottom? There's some debate about why there are 8 little things there.
That's interesting that popped up. Okay, let me.
Jerry Croth in California has written a book about this. It's on Amazon. Jerry Croth, a professor in California, UC Santa Barbara. Talked to him about it as well. So that's completely authentic. So they know we've got COVID. Now, actually, my interpretation is, can you go back to it for a second? Never. If you can't, it's cool.
Let me see which. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah, I can go back to it. Let me see. Let me enlarge it for them. Okay. There you go.
My interpretation is, what does that little curvy thing mean? My interpretation, based on other crop pictures of a similar geometry, is that they're crying for us. It's a tear, T-E-A-R. They actually see what's going on Earth. They can't do anything about it, and they're crying for us. And I could make an argument for that, but that's my interpretation for actually what it means. You ask, why did they put it there?
That resonates. Okay? Yeah, that resonates.
They're crying for us because of the virus, okay?
Yep, that totally resonates. I'm completely tracking you on that. That's
so
what I felt
looking at
it.
Crop circles are easy to do, just like electronics. Most things are easy once you get into it.
Okay, what's this here?
That's interesting. Oh yeah, this is actually interesting.
So
here's one.
Go ahead.
We might want to look at more detail on that one in a minute. Both these have a lot of detail in them.
Yeah, there's a set of like 5 slides on this particular topic. I think I have written down.
We can come to that.
Okay.
In 2019, the last crop picture of the 2019 season showed a wheel or a clock with 3 lunar months. So the ETs will come. It's basically a clock, a 3-month lunar clock. Each time around the clock, it's not like the clock we saw before. 3 lunar months, which is almost 3 months, is once around the clock as it turns. So the question is, how many times does the clock have to turn before we see ET? And there were suggestions that it turned 8 times, which would give 24 months. Now if that was 24 months, we're talking about the end of next summer to see ET, like at least in the sky, right? So it's very exciting. We'll now be maybe the summer of 2021. So that was the last one. And then right this year, exactly the same field location almost, near Stanton, it's not near Milk Hill, they drew a very similar image of another one, even more complicated. And what they did was they drew a cube. There it is. This is very sophisticated, actually. When you look at this, it isn't just an outline. Each of these little white regions has about 130 little standing tufts, which is informative as well. Like this incredible detail. They drew a cube of 8 blocks. You know, I said there were 8 before. And now 1 year in, there were 8, and now there are 4. So we've gone from 8 to 4 in 1 year. That means maybe, and when the other 4 will be gone 1 year from now.
They're counting. It's a countdown, right?
A countdown. Yeah. We had 8 to begin with. Yeah. Now we got 4 1 year later. So our original estimate of 8 might be correct, that we might get a big UFO sighting 6 months from now, next summer. And when you look at this, a counting mechanism, it's turning, the wheel is turning. When you zoom in, there was a lot of detail. Here's another one we just confirmed it. This one was, again, you had 8 originally. You look, this is a symbol for, like, they're looking at us. The eye symbol, the pupil of an eye. Crop artist with his eye, he sees this. Like, this is in the pupil of his eyes, the crop picture. Yeah. And he saw 8 and 4. First he saw 8, and now he sees 4. And this is like a Mayan clock, counting. So there were 8 time periods, each of which was 3 lunar months. And now there are 4 time periods, 3 lunar months. Now that was on July of 2020. So that implies roughly July of 2021, we might get a big UFO sighting there. You understand what I mean?
Yay.
Countdown.
Exciting. Yeah, it's a countdown.
And you see the Mayans used to count. And there was a whole bunch of countdown pictures like that. And it's not really very hard to figure this out. As soon as you forget the broken boards crap, it's fairly easy to understand. And this actually matched something in the landscape nearby as well. So they're having a countdown starting in 2019. We got 24 months. Now we had 12 months last summer. Maybe this summer coming up is when we're going to get a big UFO sighting, and people it may not be them landing. Maybe we'll just see a mothership up in space somewhere or something like that.
I hope so. That would be exciting.
Disclosure may be only like 6 months away. That's 7 months away. That's what this is implying, okay? And there was a whole series of them. There were like, there was a whole series of them. This isn't the only 2. So I'm very confident. There was about 5 more last summer talking about disclosure being maybe next summer. The summer coming up in your northern hemisphere.
Yeah, it's obviously a countdown. I think I logged a whole bunch of those that you were showing, the different countdowns on various things.
Why wouldn't they do a countdown? If they're going to show themselves to Earth people, you do a countdown. This one is really exciting. This one was near Stonehenge, and they had very detailed, you see all that stuff? Yeah. And they basically drew their craft coming into land at Stonehenge, again in 4 seasons, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 4 lunar seasons. If you go ahead, I think there's another slide that describes it. And they draw it to look like Stonehenge. It wasn't very far from Stonehenge. In 4 seasons,
yeah, I think 56 was the summer solstice one. That's the next one. This one here.
Yeah, and see, in 4 seasons, they're going to show up 1, 2, 3, 4. And the center of the thing had all this basket weave in it. So nobody did that by hand. You know, that was all poly woven. Nobody did that by hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. There was a whole bunch of crop pictures of this kind. It's obvious to draw when I decode it. It's obvious what they're talking. It's not very hard to figure out what this means.
Oh, here.
This one, I really like this one. Blow this one up. Talk about landscape. Look at the landscape on this one. There you can see Stonehenge way in the background. You see it back left?
Yeah, I see it.
So that's the road. That's the road leading to Stonehenge where all the visitors are. Back left, that's Stonehenge, okay? Where if you go see the stones, there's a visitor center there. And there's this sort of natural indentation in the road, which we call a landing groove. And it's sort of like something coming into land. And there's some woods. Now, what somebody did was, the ET guys, they saw this without the crop picture. And they thought, that looks like something will come into a land, right? So that's how they chose the field location for this crop picture. So imagine this scene without the crop picture being there. Can you do that?
Okay.
It's just like, and then they drew this extra thing in, just like a saucer coming into land.
Right.
just like what I've shown. So the crop picture filled in the landscape. The landscape was there. Somebody saw the landscape and they filled in the crop picture. And you see it points exactly at Stonehenge as well. So you couldn't get a
Right.
better example of landscape and crop picture fitting together than that. Because the landscape makes the landing groove where the crop picture landed.
Yeah, this
So
is I had no idea that all the area around the crop circle is part of the whole scene and the whole message that's trying to be conveyed. I had no idea until I started going through here. This is just so
so this is
fascinating.
really this is fascinating, isn't it? You got to
Yeah,
be.
it
And my
is.
friends were there. I had friends who go there to Stonehenge and they photographed the whole thing.
Well,
So
once
this
you
is
start to
totally
get that
cool.
part, it's fascinating. Once you understand then you can start to figure out what are they trying to say, once you know
And
that.
then you realize some ET person saw the field, saw Stonehenge, and they had some little committee meeting and they decided, yeah, this might be a good place to draw one. What are we going to draw? And they probably had a discussion and they drew exactly right there so it would fit into that landing groove and with Stonehenge in the background. You see the tail of it points right at Stonehenge there. And this is a sort of longer range. I saw this. I said, well, I've got to go to Google Earth and get a full description because it's so exciting, right?
Uh-huh.
So there's the saucer coming into land, and if you trace where that landing groove goes on Google Earth, the crop picture was where it was drawn in blue,
Uh-huh.
and it follows to sort of like that whole curve region. It goes around Stonehenge and follows that whole curve region. And there's this sort of funny thing here, like a serpent raising his head with a smile, this sort of comical thing, a little donut of trees. So if you look at the whole landscape, it's like the thing's curving and coming into land, and finally when it reaches that donut, it'll stop. So that's the whole landscape. You see how the whole thing fits in.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Wow. Okay, so let's see here. Let's move to 61. Well, I gotta go grab 61. Let me go back to us while I go grab that. Okay,
I
61.
just realized there were 40 crop pictures like that last summer, and each one of them has a story like that.
Yeah,
And you have to figure it, pretty soon you can figure it out, most of them,
there's so much to
40
each
of them.
one. Okay,
There's
how
so
about
much
this one?
into each one, yeah.
This one's amazing.
Do you like this one?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This was in Poland, and I wondered why they drew it there, and it turned out there was a windmill right next to it.
Ah, yeah,
And it
interesting.
reproduced what's called the Julia set from 24 years earlier in England. And there's a windmill right next to it,
Wow.
24 years later.
Okay, so let's see, Venus. I wanted to go into the Venus stuff. I thought that was interesting. So we need to go to slide 62. Let me.
So these aren't just in England, they're in Poland, they're all over Brazil. There was a nice one in Brazil about a month ago.
Oh, this one was right next door.
France.
Okay, let's see here. This is interesting. There's a whole series of these Venus ones too.
Yeah,
So
that
Venus.
was when Venus was bright in the sky.
Yeah, so there's a whole series of these. I have 62 through 68 here. So let me go to some of the other ones.
Yeah, I do hundreds of slides every summer.
There we go. There's more. Here's the next one.
And this was again drawn, here's another one. This was drawn in exactly the place as another crop picture from 1 year earlier. So I put the two fields, you can see the same place. If you look at upper left and lower right, you can see exactly where the field is, can't you? Those trees in the back, where they drew it. And so that when you have to combine the two images to figure out what it means, that Venus is going around the sun, and you count Venus cycles until they're coming. They're all countdowns to arrival. You have to combine the crop pictures from 2019 and 2020. Oh, this is a funny one. Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is.
They actually turned.
This is.
This is a man. Can you see a man's face here with his nose? The crop circles his nose. Can you see it?
The man's. Yeah. The crop
A
circles
big
his
head
nose.
with a nose and like an Englishman, a big sort of fat-faced Englishman. And with the yellow.
Is this the head?
This is hilarious.
Is this the head?
That's his head, and his mouth is down the left. Okay. Now what happens is where the yellow is, the yellow red, I put a dot. There's something called the ship in, where the ship's coming down. The ship's coming in is right where the yellow dot is. And it looks in the landscape like the man's eye, the yellow thing is looking at the ship in. You see, it's a joke.
Okay, so which Where's his eye at?
At the beginning, the right-hand side of the yellow thing, there's a little eye symbol. The right-hand side of the yellow line. The ship ends the left-hand side. That's his eye.
This is his eye.
And you see a face figure, and the crop picture is like what he's seeing with his eye. So when he's seeing, the crop picture is like, what is this man seeing?
Right.
He's going to see the ship come in so many cycles of Venus.
That's clever.
You got the logic now?
Yeah,
And
in so many cycles of Venus.
Was there. And I looked and saw on Google Earth, it said on Google Earth, that's where the ship in is. Because you look around and said, and I saw, that's why I made that slide. And you can see actually his son is looking at it with him. You see, go down, the father and son are both looking at the ship come in. Funny, isn't it?
Where's the son?
And the man, the left here, the lower left is like a little boy with the blue brains or something. It's like a man and his son looking up in the sky at the ship coming in. Like his eye. Anyway, if you stand back, you can sort of visualize that.
Yeah.
So that's why they drew that one there in the landscape, because it symbolizes what the man's looking at. He's looking at the ship come in. So it can't be that long. They're really implying
that
they're coming. Meant to be coming.
Okay, so let me see which one. I think that was the...
This is a bit technical, how Venus goes around the sun and all that. That was just...
Let's see, double...
This was a great one.
Okay.
So here's another one. This was a great one in terms of technical difficulty. It took me a little while. This was at Hatpin Hill, where some of the great pictures were. And this shows what's called a double pentagram of Venus. And each of these represent, you want a superior, each of these represents 0.8 of a year. The whole circle represents 8 years around the thing.
Right.
So each of these little symbols represents 0.8 year or 292 days. So the Venus has 10 things around it. It's a Venus cycle of 10 years. It's called a double pentagram of Venus.
Right.
And that implies that it's not very long. It may even be like 0.8 years, like less than a year before we see ET. And this was in August of 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Spectacular thing. No.
Cool.
And there's just lots of things. A double pentagram. So maybe 292 days maybe until we see a big mothership or something. So
I definitely think 2021 we're gonna something major is gonna happen.
If you blow this up a little bit,
yeah.
And it took me a while to make that slide. You can actually see where it was drawn. On the left, you can see Hatpin Hill with the first set of trees, and there's a white horse.
There's another white horse.
Hatpin Hill, white horse. When you drive into Hatpin Hill, there's this road coming in there, and the road that leads up that hill, there's a white horse on the right. On the left, you can see it. It's a sort of uphill road. You reach the top to the parking area, and there's a whole bunch of trees. There's the first set there. And you can see on the right-hand side where I put a little arrow between the crop circle and the white horse. So the white horse is coming in 3, 2, 1. Again, the white horse is coming.
Wow.
3, 2, 1. You look at the thing. So he compares it. The white horse is the one who comes to rescue us. The revelation, the white horse.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even make that connection. Wow. Okay. So let me move to 72. Let's see here.
The first white horse comes to conquer. See? The revelation.
Yep. I didn't even.
This was a great one in Bavaria.
This is cool how the trees.
Worldwide news in Bavaria.
Yeah.
And they had, this one actually had cycles of Mercury. It was another one. They actually used Mercury epicycles as a timing device. Each Mercury epicycle takes about 3 months. And there are 8 of them again. So and again, we asked how many more, and they put it right next to, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 trees.
Right.
So it shows 8 of them. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. So that would mean maybe less than a year until we see ET.
Wow. Okay, so after this one, there was some sky event ones that you had too. Let me see.
Do you understand now? This was again.
There's with the serpent. They might want to see this one. Let's make that bigger.
Yeah, if you look in the landscape, this is what you do when you see it. You see these things where it was drawn. You see this big long serpentine shape. The serpent is looking at this thing, and he sees the serpent Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan serpent.
Right.
And he sees the symbol for Mercury. 8 cycles of Mercury, but there are only 4 left. And this just looks just like the tail of that thing that landed at Stonehenge, remember?
Yeah.
It looks just like the Stonehenge picture if you include the trees. So what happens is you have to include the landscape with the picture,
right?
And then you get the whole thing together.
Yeah, you would
So
never see that. You would never know the serpent was there if you didn't have an aerial view. You know, now I
and they have this
understand
big aerial serpentine shape on the left, which I included as well. So without an aerial view, you never know it was drawn below the head of a serpent. You see?
All right, so let me see. I want to go to 81 here. I know you only have an hour, Red, and I know people have some questions that I'm curious about too in the audience. So maybe we'll just go over a couple more slides and then.
This was way up north. It was again as a clock until they come. They drew lots of clocks, Moon, Mercury, to give timing for when they were going to arrive. How many moons will it be? So they used the roundabout from a road to describe the shape of the moon. You see, I put the moon symbol next to the roundabout.
Yeah.
So you see how the shape of the trees at the roundabout look like a half moon?
Yes. That's very obvious to me.
They wouldn't know that. You wouldn't understand that unless you look at the thing. So now we know the roundabout stands for that moon symbol.
Yeah.
And then below they put this little circular thing with light and dark moons. Full moon, dark moon, full moon, dark moon. How many times is it going to turn around until we see them come? Now, this one's a bit clever. Look right below there and you'll see another set of trees.
10
trees.
Of them. Yeah.
So 10 of these trees until dark light, until these lunar cycles, dark light, until we see the ETs. So that's not very long. However you interpret what you're talking about.
So where does that put us at?
Well, I don't know, but it's in the next year. I mean, you can interpret all these.
Okay.
But that means not very long. When you start counting moons rather than years, you're talking about less than a year, aren't you?
Yep.
10 lunar months, it's less than a year.
85, let me go to 85. This is interesting here.
Yeah, here's another one. You're in the middle of nowhere. They drew it next to a dead tree. They saw this landscape feature. This wasn't well photographed. It was some kid with his drone.
Yeah.
And they show there's a living tree being planted next to a dead tree. And they drew something next to it. Actually, what that implies is we've got the old tree is dying and the new tree is coming to be born.
Yay. We can feel that. Yeah. I mean,
the old tree is dying and this is what's happening at time travel, Mark. It was a poorly represented crop picture. The old tree has gone down and that crop picture was drawn 100% just to mark this landscape feature. Are they nearby? They're trying to tell us by symbolism. There was another one just like it a couple of days later. A couple of days later, there was another spectacular one. 2 or 3 slides on from there.
Let me see. This is fascinating. I just want
to.
This one is.
Can you go ahead 1 or 2 slides?
You want to go back to the one with the tree in the middle? I don't know which one that is. I thought I had
just after the dead tree. You had the dead tree.
Oh, it's right after the dead tree. Okay.
Just after the dead tree. It's worthwhile showing it.
Okay.
I'll tell you why in a minute.
After the dead tree, which was like 85.
You should realize that's just 1 year of crop pictures.
Oh yeah, this one's fascinating. Yeah, I had this one written down, but I skipped by it here.
Okay, that was what I want to show you. There's a reason why. So just after they show that live tree coming up north somewhere, the same field where they had the COVID virus, they drew this spectacular thing. There's just a tree in the middle of the field, and that was just the tree we saw coming up in another crop picture a few days later in another part of England. So you got that?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's super cool.
The tree is coming up, and we have the 4 seasons symbolism again, just spectacular.
Yeah.
The tree of life is coming up, okay?
That's amazing.
Now, the reason that's interesting is, now our time travel friend, if we get to Mr. Poole, just did a slide showing lightning striking this tree about a month ago. He took something right from the crop picture and put it on Twitter. So it's clearly the same image of a lightning's going to strike that tree, you know, like he showed that same tree image on Twitter, one of the time travelers on Twitter.
Okay, so let me go to 107 so you can explain the Mr. Poole thing to them before we take questions. Let me go find that 107.
Or you can continue, yeah.
Okay, 107.
It's really not that hard to understand these things. If you follow it one thing at a time, just like anything, you can sort of follow it and understand exactly what you're talking about.
So, this is not this one. It's not this one. Hold on, it's 130.
They're just not doing it in English. They're showing us pictures of what they're going to do. They're just showing us pictures.
Okay, so maybe if we could go into what this is. There's just so many I want to show. We're not going to be able to get through nearly all of them. But
well, what happened was you're used to what you call the chief executive officer. We're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah,
CIO.
CIO.
He's gone quiet.
Yeah.
He went quiet on November 3rd. We haven't heard anything from him, have we?
Mm-mm.
But he also said he's part of a larger group, didn't he?
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of them. So it seems that some of the others, maybe him, some of the others at least, are on Twitter. There are about a half a dozen of them on Twitter under various accounts. I'm not even going to say what the other ones were.
Right.
Mr. Poole is one of them, for sure. And Poole comes from a mirror. A loop, and a pool is a mirror of loop. What he means, a loop in time is time travel.
Right.
And someone that goes back to change the past. Pool is a mirror of a loop.
Can you explain to them what 311 means too? The significance.
And actually, if you look at this symbol, he posted this little symbol
yeah.
of Saturn from Huygens, and then next to this letter, who we're not supposed to mention, he put the exclamation point next to there. It's not in the original drawing. He added that by Photoshop. It's that little red box. That's pretty much a clue, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that's
not in the original drawing from 1597 of Huygens. He actually, that letter, he put an exclamation point to tell us to mention that letter, which we're not allowed to mention.
Let me show them real quickly. This is an account that he follows, and he decodes stuff on his page, you guys. And so let me show you one of the decodes real quick before we take questions.
They're on my Twitter page now. I just put a couple before.
I grabbed this one that you just sent me. Let me move over to it. Okay, so this is one of your Mr. Poole decodes that I thought would be easy for them to sort of understand, because some of them are very abstract. Was Mr. Poole telling us about solar winds before the news became public? Did they hack all of the you know, right? That might be it. Oh, what is it? Thank goodness for Texas. And then so he's got this picture from him next to, right?
Well, they posted that picture on November 29th. Now, go back to the previous picture.
Okay.
Most people would definitely say that represents solar winds, doesn't it?
Right.
That is solar winds. That means instead of saying the word solar winds, that's solar winds, okay?
Yeah, I see
Which
that.
is just the big hack in Texas.
And then this
they showed
is
the computer
getting
hacked.
Right.
The router's computer getting hacked. And so that indicates foreknowledge of the event.
Right.
We had other things.
When did the account tweet this out? It was 11/29
right there.
11/29, and was this on the 11/29 and 11/23?
And there were other things about before the COVID lockdown, showing the lockdown and all that was happening before. Similar, and he'll put, so often the things he shows are things that haven't happened yet. They may be several months in the future. And so there's a whole bunch of me. There's not just me. There are like a dozen very high-level people following this, high-level codes. So it looks to be like part of this time travel, part of this unknown group, the 17 group, are on Twitter.
Right.
And they've gone quietly. Why should they be on Twitter? You know, they just don't want anybody to find out who they are. And so they're not just on the major website. And their main guy we'll call him, said, we came here for a reason. That means not just him, there are others too. Right. And if you decode it all, apparently there are like 6 to 12 of them. It's like a time travel team. And the code is US DOD from the future, Department of Defense. I'll tell you who they are. The US DOD from the future. I don't know how far ahead, 50 years, 100 years. And they've somehow got access to time travel tech. And they've come back and they're fiddling with our history right now. They're fiddling with events, trying to shape things. And that's what's going on right now. We're right in the middle of it, this big election controversy, which I'm not supposed to mention.
I feel that's how Trump got into office in the first place. I felt a timeline shift when that happened. It wasn't supposed to happen. And then it did.
Yeah, do you want me to know? I knew that happened before I met you. Do you want me to hear what happened then?
Yeah.
Well, before Trump got elected, people were ridiculing him. And in Brazil, these spectacular crop pictures appeared. One was an eye of providence next to an elephant for the Republican Party. So I said, the Republicans might win. They drew the eye of providence next to an elephant in the landscape, clearly an elephant, like the donkey and the elephant. The others showed someone getting a swat, like a star thing. And you look at the landscape, it looked just like the night of the first debate when it happened. It looked just like Trump debating Hillary on the landscape, and someone was giving Hillary a swat on the back of the head. It was exactly what it looked like. And then You know how she collapsed on 9/11/16? Mysteriously, she collapsed, and she didn't win the election because she collapsed at the 9/11 memorial. You know, she was a walking pneumonia.
Right.
So was it really walking pneumonia? Was an infrared heat beam trying to make her look sick?
Right.
Anyway, that incident cost her a lot of votes, didn't it? Probably. So I personally, I don't think that was an accident. I think she went down for it was a butterfly effect. She's
Right.
not really hurt. Temporarily making it look like she's ill.
Right.
And then below that thing, there's a story. The word appeared 43 for 43 days until the election.
Yeah.
And if you turn it over, it said EHA. What's going to happen? So there was a Brazilian crop picture just before the election, and I was 50% sure they had rigged it so Trump would win before it happened. So I was pretty sure that by some miracle, that I was following with people who by some miracle Trump's going to pull this off. And right now what we're seeing is it looks like Trump's going to lose. I can't say anything. But again, I just have this feeling by some miracle, he's going to pull it off.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
They can't go through this whole big process and have it all crash out now.
No.
Having the dark side get in.
No. And the people won't allow it. The people won't allow it at this point either. Why wake them all up and run an operation like that just to lose? It doesn't make sense.
And Mr. Poole has shown there are two, you know, like Robert Frost, 2 roads crossed in a yellow wood.
Yeah.
I've chose the one less traveled. He's shown 2 roads in a wood, and we're going to choose one path and not the other. We're going to choose the path of the heart.
Right.
I saw that. Love in the heart.
Yeah.
And there's a whole, and he's shown crossroads of a freeway. We're going one. So what we're at a crossroads or a nexus in time. What do you call this? A nexus in time, a crossroads. And they've come back right now to push us along the correct timeline, not the new one. And it's supposed to happen on the solstice, 5 days from now, approximately, when Jupiter and Saturn are in the sky.
Right.
The timeline shift is supposed to happen. Have you watched Fringe, the TV show?
Oh, yeah. Love Fringe.
Fringe, when it was September, reset time by sending the boy forward. And it felt normal, but all of a sudden things were different. So you're not going to see big catastrophes, but all of a sudden our history and time will be reset in some way that looks miraculous.
Right.
Like how did that happen?
Right.
And everybody will have Mandela effects. They'll say, oh, it didn't feel right. It'll take a while. So that seems to be what's happening now. We're going to have a reset of time and history. They're not going to come and show themselves to the world right now.
Right.
But they're going to put us on the right path.
On the right path so that they can. Yep.
I just put the top of my Twitter page, just a couple if you don't believe me. Like our friend said, light versus darkness. He says that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The friend we can't mention, 17.
Right.
So Mr. Poole calls himself 113, which means the same thing in ASCII code. And he just has the chess set, the light versus the dark, playing the game.
Right.
And the light side's going to win. So it all parallels very closely, Mr. Poole, what our other friend says. It may not be the same person, but there's a group of about 6 or 12 of them. There's actually a group.
And you believe they're time travelers associated with the operation that are putting out
yes, 100%.
codes and puzzles on Twitter. Yeah.
There may even be parallel universe kind of thing like that, like in Fringe had a parallel universe.
Right. I'm tracking.
I would put it past him, okay?
Yeah.
There's some sort of wormhole technology going on. Wormhole travel. Mm-hmm. That opens up to anything, right? And there's wormhole travel going on. There's stuff coming back from the future.
Right.
There's not only does the past influence the future, but the future influences the past. That's when they say everything is connected.
Right.
The time, the figure 8 symbol.
It's a loop. It's a loop.
A loop.
Right. Okay, can I ask you a few questions? The audience is bugging me. They want me to ask you questions.
Yeah, let's go and do it. I've talked long enough.
Okay.
The most interesting questions.
Okay. Ask about the warning circle in Winchester, number 1. Number 2, what do the circles look like later in time? And number 3, could they be made by music vibrations, i.e. cymatics?
Okay, but you can't make most of them that way, okay? Now, what do they look like later in time? What does that mean?
I don't know. There's so many questions in here. I'm not going to be.
Let's go back to the Winchester. The Winchester was followed by another one in Italy, which said Tomeo A.T. Forensis in 2015. We just haven't shown them all. And I guarantee you that was an authentic crop picture. It led into a lot of stuff. So what we're being warned is we're having I can say it in one sentence. Don't forget this. We're having a covert Trojan horse takeover of the human race by enemy alien forces. That's what they were warning us about. A covert Trojan horse takeover of the alien race. So when they said, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises, that means like, beware Greeks bearing gifts. That's a metaphor for Greeks bearing gifts. It's a Trojan horse takeover. So when these gray aliens from Zeta and Orion got into our government and offered them gifts back in the 50s, that was simply so they could get into our government inside the city gates.
Right.
They get into our system. For all we know, the American political system is being manipulated by them right now.
Right.
You know, we don't know if it's Democrats or Soros. For all we know, we got aliens behind the whole thing. I'm serious.
Right.
We could have this could be a covert takeover of the whole planet we're talking about.
Right.
And
so that's what you feel that crop circle. People are fascinated by that crop circle. That's what you feel it was basically a warning about.
Definitely,
the Trojan horse takeover.
There was a follow-up in Italy in 2017, and the one in Italy said the year 2021 was when it would happen 6 years later. Timeo et Forentis. And I know that's real. I was going in there. There's UFO messages. So they're warning about a covert takeover of the human race by dark forces, whether they're alien forces. And that's sort of what we see now. Like, to me, that feels like what we're seeing now. This is a covert takeover.
Right.
If the Democrats get the presidency, the whole world's going to be taken over, you know?
Right. I agree.
Gone. South Korea's gone. Taiwan's gone. Australia's gone. It's all gone, you know? They control the American military.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got the American military under the control of them. So it seems to all be building up to right now.
Well, we got to deal with the military-industrial complex, which is dealing with these negative ET races that have been described in these crop circles. So, I mean, that's the elephant in the room we got to deal with. So,
the same race is described in the CJ codes, the USO contactee. It says right there, beware of Orion and G reticuli. So the same races described in crops are described in these computer codes, which I've got from an active military contactee. I'm not going to say who he is. He's actually a friend of mine on Twitter. I see the guy. We're keeping him private. Just respecting his privacy is what we're doing.
Right.
In the future, I'm going to tell you, this guy is getting the messages. We're a very, very important man in the future as an ambassador to the alien races. And I think they've made a good decision for two reasons. First, he's incredibly psychic. Second, he has military training. He can lead soldiers. Third, he's respectable and talks well. And there are a few other reasons. I'm not going to mention there, it's going to expose him. But I think it's a good choice. You think, well, so the alien races choose their own people and represent them on Earth. And I think he will be an excellent leader for us, the human race, to represent in the 20s and the 30s, which we're going to, you know, by the end of 2030, we're going to be allied with some alien race for sure. We'll have alliances. It won't be that much longer.
Hopefully with positive ones. Okay, so we have a couple more questions if you have time. Have you ever done a 3D reconstruction? He doesn't have a YouTube. He only has a Twitter. I've
been blocked from. It's because I've been blocked from all the others. I had 3 Facebook pages. Intel agencies ferociously took me down. You asked my other friends on Twitter, ferociously took me down off Facebook. I only had 5,000 friends, and they post their bullshit. I post the real thing. People stopped watching the bullshit and started reading me.
Right.
It completely destroyed the disinformation campaign on Facebook. So they eventually hacked me off. I wasn't removed by Mark Zuckerberg. I was removed by Intel computer hackers. There was a team of them in 2018. They also attacked the French people at the same time. Right. They attacked Karen Alexander, who was Steve's wife, very lovely woman. The French people got attacked. There was a big campaign led by the French government. And let me tell you, if you've never dealt with Intel people, they're worse than you could possibly imagine. Not just like protecting the government. They're some of the most satanic people. I'm warning you people, like the people in the US Intel and French Intel. This is the most dark, evil people. And if you haven't met them, they're there. And if they come after you, you'll see them. So that's what Trump's facing now. It's the same thing. But I've seen them. The reason I don't have many pages, it's impossible. Twitter has left me alone thus far.
Yeah.
They haven't really been concerned about crop pictures. So Twitter hasn't censored me at all. but just like a Martin Geddes, you know Martin on Twitter,
Yes.
the leading English researcher. He's censored everywhere. Very honest fellow. He's censored everywhere. So there's a limit to what he can say.
I like him a lot. I love his tweets.
Yeah.
They're a very a nice balance because Twitter can be so crazy. I really love his tweets.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, Janet of Fall Cabal is a close friend of mine. She's
Oh, really?
Yeah. We've been 13 years. We've been good friends. So she can't get on the other channels either.
So yeah, you can find Red Collie on Twitter. His Twitter is linked below. As far as that goes, let me see. They're asking, could they be placeholders in our timeline? And what about the ghost circles?
Yeah, it's two separate questions.
Right.
Let's do the ghost circles because it's easy.
Okay.
First of all, the ghost circles are proof that it wasn't made by rope and boards. So what happens is this energy affects the crop. Typically what the energy does, it can do two things. First, it can knock loose the wheat seeds off the crop so they form green ghost in September or October. So a lot of times you see these crop circles that nobody walked in, and you'll see a bunch of these green ghosts like on Stonehenge dronescapes. If you go to Stonehenge dronescapes on YouTube, Stonehenge dronescapes, Nick Bull did these beautiful green ghost or crop pictures which showed up green months after they're gone. And the reason is the energies affected the wheat and it's growing differently in that one little spot. And it looks like a green crop pictures appeared out of nowhere. So that really proves there was nobody there. The energy did it. The second thing the energy can do is it can stop the crop from growing in subsequent years, like the next spring. And what happens is there's nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil, and it kills the bacteria where the radiation hit it. So if you buy soil from a gardening center, they irradiate they don't want you to be poisoned by the soil, like potting mix. So they irradiate all that soil with microwave to kill the bacteria, but they sell it to the public, so it's sterile. They sterilize the soil. And that's what a crop picture does too. It will sterilize the soil temporarily. So the next year, no plants will grow where the crop picture was. And then a few years later, the bacteria reinvade the soil. So there are two kinds of ghost. There's the crop killing ghost, there's the green ghost, and both of them show it's made by radiation, not the rope and boards. It's 100% proven, okay? Right. What was the previous? Oh, the placeholders.
Yeah. Are there placeholders?
Okay. That's very interesting because what's the theory is if we're dealing with time travels, the question is, are they communications to us or are they timeline markers? What if your time travel is flying above and there are two parallel timelines for Earth? The buildings look the same, you and I look the same, but there's different. And one of them maybe Trump won the election, the other Biden won the election, okay? And there's two paths, two roads. So what happens is in one of those timelines, you have one set of crop circles, and the other timeline, you have another set of crop circles. So the UFO flying over can navigate by just looking in the field and seeing what's there. It looks at his little dictionary and says, oh, I know where I am now. It's a timeline marker, temporary, doesn't affect anyone. So the idea is they can tell, even though almost everything's the same, they can quickly tell by a flyover which timeline they're in. So that's actually quite a plausible hypothesis.
Interesting.
Been around for like 20-something years. Multiple timelines. So if we went to another timeline, the crop circles might be different. So we might be seeing one set of crop circles in our timeline. It might not be the same crop circles in the other.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, Chu, for your super chat. She says, he, I'm not positive, says, this is great. Thanks all. Yeah, I never even thought about that. That's, whoa, mind blown. It's like a marker.
There's a lot to think about, isn't it? If you watch Fringe, you get in the Fringe is there's Fringe, there's Travelers. There's another TV show called Dark. Have you seen Dark on Netflix?
No, I don't watch much TV. I only know Fringe because I back when I used to watch TV, that was the show that I watched, that and X-Files, when I was younger.
There are about 3 or 4 of these TV shows which have elements of it to explain. And they actually quote time travel stuff from Dark, which is another German time travel show. They do that they actually do that on the internet because they consider it helpful to understand what they're doing.
This stuff is fascinating. I have a question for you about, and I'll kind of leave it at this so we can start to wrap it up. So Foyle and I have a Space Force news show that we do on Sundays, and we talk about a lot of different stuff, science related. And there's been a lot of talk lately about time crystals. They discovered the time crystals.
Yeah,
Right?
I suppose so.
What
That's Star Trek sort of
what do you know about the time crystals? Because I've heard a
I
lot
know
of different
nothing.
stuff. Okay, nothing?
It sounds like bullshit to me, but I don't know, you know. Time crystal, I mean, that sounds crazy.
I'm trying to
I don't know anything
remember.
about it.
I'm trying to remember. Okay, so, but yeah, there was an article. I'm trying to remember it right now. My brain is jumbled with too many things. But
Science fiction shows have them. I forgot where some science fiction.
That's not what I'm referring to. This was what Foil. Can you describe it for me? I need my whatchamacallit. I need my wingman here. I can't articulate exactly what they are, but you'll be able to do it in like a sentence. So will you please post that in there? Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. Well, this is kind of, what is it? I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue, but remember how we discussed that, Red? I'll have something on the, okay. So a time crystal or space-time crystal is a state of matter that repeats in time as well as in space. Normal three-dimensional crystals have a repeating pattern in space, but remain unchanged as time p.
Now I know what you're talking about. You're talking about a four-dimensional periodic crystal.
Right. There you go.
I'm a PhD in that subject. You know, that was my subject. X-ray crystallography.
I knew you would know about the time crystals if I actually said it right, but I'm not as good at articulating these kind of abstract concepts as.
That's actually something that's already been studied scientifically, but it's an obscure subject. Mm-hmm. Normal crystals can have 360 different symmetries in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
They're called space groups.
Uh-huh.
So when you grow a crystal like DNA, the first thing you do is you determine the space group. And otherwise you start your analysis like I had P21212 or C2221 or P. So that's actually, but in 4 dimensions, if it's repeating in time, there are, I think, 1,060 kinds. And someone's already done a book on it. I have the book somewhere, Atlas of the 4-dimensional time crystals. It's not what he calls it, 4-dimensional crystals. So someone's already studied that at Oxford, a man named Whitaker. Very obscure book. I think it sold 50 copies. So that's actually been studied scientifically. But so far as I know, it doesn't exist. Now, I wrote a physics paper some years ago trying to convince physicists that things like electrons, the wave-particle duality, was actually what your friend said. Actually, if you include a 4-dimensional object as an electron, that would explain the properties of its quantum properties. For example, certain like a G = 2 for an electron. How do you explain the electron's twice as magnetic as it should be? Well, it can have 2 different axes of spin in one space, one in time. So if you consider, I wrote it classically, you can make a classical model for the electron to make a 4-dimensional helix out of it. And personally, I believe that's what quantum theory is. The particles, they've modeled them as strings. Personally, I think they're 4-dimensional paths, just like your friend says. But the other physicists won't refuse to follow that path, and I'm not going to be able to do it. And if you explain quantum theory as different 3-dimensional projections of the 4-dimensional reality on a very small scale, that would actually explain a lot of things in quantum physics.
Interesting.
But whether they actually use that to travel, I don't know, you know. Mr. Poole says, how do we know things you don't know? He says he uses a quantum gate, like a stargate. You can see the future, like in that movie.
Project Looking Glass.
Project Looking Glass. There was a Deja Vu movie, and let me explain. I've actually through CJ, I have a coded message which is completely authentic from particle physicists who live in the future about 2060, plus or minus 10 years in Jerusalem. I have this message which I'm not allowed to release, and it was an authentic message from that time. And the purpose of, but they're not aliens, they're humans. I think there might be Muslim physicists, I don't know, they're religious people. They're near the temple, they're right near the Dome of the Rock. And there's been a big disaster there. I'm not going to say what it is. And the top side, Jerusalem, has been wiped out. Top side destruction of all this and that. The code says top side destruction of early libraries, monuments, whatever. So these physicists, by that point, they know about a particle they can send back in time. They've discovered a particle to the past. They can send Morse code messages back in time, computer code, and they all get together. The group, these are like PhD physicists from CERN, they all get together in that area and they decide, they agree on some message like an Arecibo type of message that can be sent back in time to change it so it never happens.
Yeah.
So they've sent us a message back in time to change the timeline. Now I've got that message. I know what it says. There's codes in there to stop it from ever happening. Even tells you what the danger is, but I can't say that over the internet. If any intelligence agency wants a copy of the message, U.S. or Israel will be the two countries, I am perfectly prepared with permission to give it to them. And but that's disastrous still. It's only 2020, so I thought, well, maybe it's not supposed to be known yet. I have it on my files backed up. So we can actually receive messages in time. These people are so desperate. Believe me, they're desperate. Their only salvation is sending a message back in time to save themselves. They're willing to wipe themselves out and rewrite history because their reality there is so bad. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. So it's probably going to be that this message will be acted on by, at some point that'll never happen. But there's a timeline there that dies out, just like we're talking about our timeline dying out. Well, and I have a message from that timeline.
Yeah.
Actually, I have it in my code. It's sitting on my
From the timeline that dies out when we shift?
Well, it's still there right now. It hasn't been cut off yet.
Okay.
But at some point, we'll take action. I mean, Trump would know what to do if he got in office. We'll take action and stop that timeline from ever happening. And they wouldn't be there anymore. That timeline would no longer exist. There's a book, it's real. This is all real. I deal with this every day. Like, there's a book, Timescape, like Gregory Benford. Have you ever read that?
No.
Famous science fiction novel. He discovered tachyons that go back in time. And Earth is dying, a famous 1980 science fiction novel. Earth is dying of pollution. And they have to send a message back so that DuPont doesn't make a certain chemical that pollutes the oceans and destroys a red tide. So they send the message back by Morse code. It's received by somebody.
It makes sense, right? That would be the way to correct things, is to go back in time and stop one event from causing a whole.
Send information back in Timescape. It's a great novel. I'll let you read it if you want to read it.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of like that guy. And what happens is later on, after that Timescape's wiped out, he goes to a meeting and he meets all the physicists who were talking to him before, but they're not the same guys who sent the message from later. They have their wives, the same names, but they're different people.
Right.
So that's what's really going to happen to us soon. I think we're at this bump, Trump-Biden timeline crossing.
Right.
So something's supposed to happen right soon to shift our timeline,
Well, this great conjunction is going to be interesting. I mean, not that I think anything's going to dramatically change on that day, but
yeah.
Like you talking about this reset in time, or I feel something. I go a lot by intuition and other senses beyond just the five, and I just feel something coming. And I can't tell you exactly what, but I feel something. And
Mr. Poole, let me just add to you, Mr. Poole's relation to the big guy.
Mm-hmm.
He says, the storm is getting closer. This was a message from a year ago, highly coded.
Mm-hmm.
The storm is getting closer. It's starting to rain already. The water is getting colder.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, reset reversal. So he's going to reset time and reverse the result.
I think I have that. I think I have that. Go ahead.
When our friend says, watch the water, I want to explain what it means. When he says, watch the water, what he means is, and Mr. Poole says, watch the water's getting colder. What he means is, if you have a big storm going to the ocean, around the storm, the water's cold because it swells up all the deep water from underneath, swells up, and the water gets cold near a storm. So when the water gets cold, you can tell that a storm is coming. And that's when big guy 17 says, watch the water, right. And Mr. Poole says the water is getting colder. There's such an interrelation between the Poole group and the other group. There has to be a relation between the two groups, They say almost the same things.
You're fascinating.
So it's coming up soon.
To listen to.
Yeah.
You know a lot.
I wish it already happened.
Huh?
I wish it already happened. I was planning to not talk to you until it had happened, as you recall.
Well, I was
going to wait till it was over.
You could always come back whenever, Red. You're always welcome to come back. And I mean, we didn't even get to go through half of your crop circle decodes. And really, there's so many questions the audience has for you. There's no possibility I can even get to them. So
I can chat someone on Twitter. Just send me Twitter and I'll answer some of them. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I think a good number of people in here probably follow.
I'll answer the first 20.
Okay. So hear that, you guys? He's taking the first 20 questions on Twitter.
I've got to keep my life going. I can't answer like 80 questions on Twitter.
Yeah.
Gotta keep my life going.
I don't blame you. It gets hard. And I know you wanted to keep this to an hour, so I'll go ahead and start to close it. I just have a couple of announcements I need to get through here.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, did you guys hear that? He said Merry Christmas. I would say Merry Christmas, but I don't.
I've got to make one announcement before you start.
Yeah.
I've got to thank Mark Fussell at Crop Circle Connector in Bristol.
Okay.
For having the leading website. Crop Circle Connector, Mark Fussell is one of the leading crop circle websites. So go to it if you have time. Thank you very much.
Are you going to be speaking at anything anytime soon? Any events or anything like that that we can let people know about? I mean,
normally I do. Like Catherine Hand has this big event in Coffs Harbour every thing. Because of the COVID, all the events have been canceled. Catherine.
Right. Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Catherine, she's a nice woman, and have disclosure events, and everything's canceled. We go to Coffs Harbour, so there's no events planned. The UFO meeting's canceled. Everything's canceled.
Yeah. So what do I do, Red? I don't even celebrate holidays, and like now my audience is just now finding this out that I don't celebrate holidays. I'm not unfriendly, you guys. I'm not saying Merry Christmas because I don't really celebrate it, but a Merry Christmas to those that do. You know what I mean? I'm not a bah humbug. I'm just, I don't know. I don't celebrate Christmas holidays. Is that weird? Maybe that is weird. Okay, so next week, same time, Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, Johann Fritz will be on with me. He's a secret space program whistleblower. We'll be talking about Kruger, the Dark Fleet, all that kind of stuff. So make sure and check that out. Also, Space Force News. I'll be back again for Space Force News on Sunday with my wonderful co-host, Loyal to the Foil, who's so wonderfully intelligent and has a photographic memory unlike me, who can't remember anything. So anyway, so make sure and check that out. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights right here on this channel. Thank you to all the mods for doing such an amazing job tonight. I really appreciate you guys. And to those that put super chats in, thank you very much. Also, the super chats from last week, I want to say thank you. If I had them written down right here, where did they go? Where did they go? They disappeared on me. That would happen right now. I think they're over here. Okay, yeah. Sandra Anderson, Suiterbug, White Hat, Jerry, and Bella Mafia. Thank you so much for your super chats last show. And on that note, it was super awesome having you on, Red. Awesome. Let me know anytime you want to come back on. Let's do it again. Go over some more crop circles and some new stuff you got going on, new information. And it was wonderful hanging out with you guys. Thank you. I'm sorry if we couldn't get to some of your questions, but it was just a little too much to try to pack into this small amount of time. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming. And we will see you next Wednesday night at 6:30 Pacific. Good night.